everyone. My name is Hady Raphael, and today on the show, Montreal wins 2-3 at BMO Field, and the back three is here to stay. That and a lot more on episode 145 of The Ball is Round. And I'm here today with Eve Powell, that's joining me for this amazing episode. How are you, Eve?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, it's impossible to not be happy after a win against the rivals, right?
Exactly. Um, you know, it was like a really long break before this match, and so it was kind of hard to kind of get amped up and get back, into the swing of things. But I think there's no better way to kick off the final push of the season than by than by a trip to Toronto and a trip with 3 points in the bag.
Exactly. It was very important for Hernan Losada and also CF Montreal. Um, like we said last week or the week before with Elias, we said that last week it was very important for Montreal to start that last run before the playoffs with a win against the rivals, against one of the worst teams in MLS. So that's a good thing. But let's talk about CF Montreal and the last few weeks, because last game that CF Montreal played was on the 26th of July. So exactly like 4 days shy of a month.
Hmm.
That was the last competitive game that CF Montreal played. We haven't seen any friendlies during all
Hmm.
that time.
Hmm.
Do you think that this played in their favor, or do you think that it didn't? It's not very good for the team morale, for the you know for the performance on the pitch.
I mean, I think like Montreal didn't necessarily have an advantage over Toronto in that regard. I think if anything, Toronto actually had the advantage because they had so many players who were injured and looking to come back, right? And they managed to get a few of those players back from injury. I think that's a really tricky question because it can kind of, depending on how the team handles it, depending on how the coach handles it, it can really give them the opportunity to make a reset, or the players can kind of tune out a little bit, get a little bit asynchronous, like you said. Their morale might slump, especially because they got knocked out at a shutout at home, which is not really a ceremonious way to exit a tournament. Um, but I mean, I caught a little bit of like the pregame, speaking points from the players and the coach, and it seemed as though they were overall, they were it seemed as though they used the time wisely, I guess would be the way to put it. They used it to kind of reset and rebuild some tactics, which I think was important, especially with the departure of Rudy Camacho. This was going to be the first time we see the post Camacho era for Montreal. And I think we were all really curious to see what that defense was going to shape up like.
Yeah, exactly, and we're going to talk about it in the second segment for sure, because that was the main question mark before the beginning of that game. Now we talked about the fact that CF Montreal didn't play a competitive game since the 26th of July, but not only that, it was the first MLS game since the 15th of July. At that time, CF Montreal won against Charlotte FC at Stade Saputo on the score of 2-0. And we still remember that time because that was a time where we were very disappointed because CF Montreal were playing just before that game against Charlotte. They had three very important games and they lost every single one of them.
Yes.
Losing at home against New York City FC, losing at home against Atlanta 1-0, both of them, and losing heavily in Chicago 3-0. So we needed to see a dominating performance from CF Montreal against, as I said before, one of the worst teams in MLS this season. even if it's a team that spends a lot, obviously, Toronto FC. Let's take a look at what Hernan Losada prepared for us. So the starting 11 for Hernan Losada, I don't know if you have it. Yeah. So in goal, we had Jonathan Sirois, that was still here. The back three, so that was a back three that was chosen by Hernan Losada, with George Campbell playing on the right of the defense, Gabriel Corbo playing on the left of the defense, and Joel Waterman playing in the middle of the back three. As a right wing back, sorry, there was Aaron Herrera. As a left wing back, Mathieu Chouanière. In the middle of the pitch, Samuel Piet and Nathan Saliba. Up front as a number 10, Bryce Duke. And the two strikers, Mahala Opoku, Jules Anthony Vilsan. When you look at that starting 11, Eve, were you surprised? Is there something that really, made you doubt the choices of Hernan Losada?
Doubt, I'm not sure. Doubt is maybe a strong word. I think I had some question marks when I saw that they were going to continue with the back three. Because I know, when I think it was you and myself and Elias were last together, all three of us kind of expected to see something different. And lo and behold, that was not the case. It seems as though he's kind of married to the back three. Of course, always curious to see where on the pitch Mathieu Chouanière is going to end up, because he could be anywhere. So surprised a little bit to see him at left wing back, especially with ostensibly a fit Lassi Lapalainen available. And Jules Anthony Vilsan, with his first start of his career, I think is also a big surprise and a big up perhaps to the young player. Maybe had several consecutive weeks of training to impress the coach.
Yeah, exactly. So that means that there are things that happen during the training camp, or the impromptu training camp. That made Losada change his mind regarding a few players. I was really wondering what we will see after that training camp. I'm pretty sure if I had $100 to bet on, I would never have bet for this starting 11. That's for sure.
No, same.
Now the game started very, very well for CF Montreal, really controlling the play, really making sure that they use all the space left by Toronto FC defenders. There was a lot of space between the lines, a lot of space on the wings, a lot of space everywhere. I just can't understand how that team is functioning. But let's talk about CF Montreal, because on the 13th minute, Mahala Opoku received the ball on the left hand side. A low cross directly to Jules Anthony Vilsan that was directly on the first post. And unfortunately, the shot of Jules Anthony Vilsan was completely off target. When you saw that, did you realize how much space that Montreal offense had?
It was really disconcerting. I was really confused to see how much space they had. Honestly, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, because it's just I didn't understand, what the Toronto FC coach Terry Dunfield, what his instructions to his players were, because it just seemed as though there were little clusters of TFC players here and there, but it wasn't necessarily a formation that you could name. It wasn't like a 3-5-2. It wasn't because they were just kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It was so bizarre.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that was a lack of unity within that team, a lack of you didn't feel that they played as a unit, as simple as that. So it was individuals on a soccer pitch against a team that was here to play some serious soccer, which is CF Montreal. And we talked about that left flank of CF Montreal, so the right flank of the defense for Toronto FC, and they exploited that flank as much as possible. They had fun. I think they did everything. All the offense started from that left flank for CF Montreal. And we saw it directly after, and at the 18th minute, Jules Anthony Vilsan getting the ball on the top of the penalty box, And then you see his shot that was wow, that was really, really,
It was
really
close. It
powerful.
was well placed.
Really, really powerful with a lot of pace. Not a lot of curl. Really, like a very straight and powerful shot that went directly. First of all, that was saved partially by the goalkeeper of TFC on the post. Came back, touched the back of the keeper, and fell down to Mathieu Chouanier that was running a great sliding tackle in a certain way. The ball in the back of the net for Mathieu Chouanier. It was 1-0 after 18 minutes. That wasn't a stolen lead for CF Montreal,
No,
I believe.
no, not at all. Like you said, they had made a lot of great exploits down that left flank, and so I wasn't particularly surprised to see this goal come from a play that had originated in that area. Um, I love to see Mathieu Chouanier being the fox in the box striker as he played left wing back and as he played numerous other positions throughout the match. It was really, really funny to see. But I mean, who else could you want to score a goal for Montreal in Toronto against
Samuel
Toronto
Piet.
MLS? Yes, but okay, if it's not going to be Samuel Piet,
Oh, Mathieu Chouanier. Jonathan Sirois
exactly.
would have been nice. Uh,
Okay, that would have
on the
okay. Well,
penalty.
I think we all would have just about fallen over in that one.
We want to
And it,
see the Chilavert in Jonathan Sirois for people that know Jose Luis Chilavert. That was a Paraguayan goalkeeper that used to shoot all penalties
yeah,
for his team and all free kicks for his team. So that's what I want to see with Sirois. No, I'm joking, obviously. But yeah, no, it's always nice to see Mathieu Chouanier scored. He's been so important for us this year. He's been a veteran at 24 years old. He's the veteran in the squad, alongside Samuel Piet, Joel Waterman. These are the veterans right now in that squad, and they were the oldest players on the pitch,
yeah,
which is kind of surprising when you know that Samuel Piet is only 27 or 28.
28.
Yeah, 28. He was the oldest player on the pitch for CF Montreal, which I like, right? Because play the youth.
Yeah.
So that was the first goal for CF Montreal. I was expecting some sort of reaction from TFC.
No,
There
no.
wasn't any, is it? Because TFC is that bad, or did CF Montreal played it right, in your opinion, Eve?
I think it's a little of column A, a little of column B. Obviously TFC is in dire straits. Like they haven't been this bad in years, and I'm sure conceding again, after losing 6 or 7 matches in a row, did not help morale. I'm sure they did not have a ton of morale coming into this game, a ton of confidence even. Um, but Montreal definitely, I think they just came out with such a hunger and such an intensity. Like it really seemed as though they had a point to prove the even after the goal. It seemed as though they were not satisfied to say, "Oh, we got a goal." Let's sit back and defend because we know that doesn't go well for Montreal, as we'll talk about later. Um, it seemed as though they wanted to say, "Let's get more." It's like they could smell the blood in the water, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It was, yeah, as you said, it was a bit of column A, a bit of column B. I like you. You really love that sentence, by the way. That
I
proverb.
do.
You use it quite often. But yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. But I've seen some sort of how can I say, calmness in the way
Yeah,
CF Montreal was playing,
yeah.
which I haven't seen this year yet. I think it's the first time that we've seen CF Montreal really have that calmness in the way they approach a game, they approach a
Hmm.
lead.
Hmm.
That's what was surprising for me. And it continued right after because they took, let's say, a 3 minutes break of CF Montreal, but then they started again to really attack that goal for Toronto FC. at the 24th minute on a corner, Gabriele Corbo volleyed the ball. That honestly, I was pretty sure that found the back. I was pretty sure it was
Oh,
on target. I was pretty sure. Looking at it, I was like, oh!
I know
and
that, and
then,
that what a
and,
goal that would have been.
and then I see it like it went really close to the post, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
that far off. Do we have? Does Gabriele Corbo have some sort of fantastic goal in him at one
Like
point in
like a Daniel
this
Lovitz.
season, a Daniel Lovitz kind of goal, or do you feel that I can feel it coming? I can feel it coming.
You know, he's been he's been full of all sorts of surprises, hasn't he? Gabriele Corbo since he
Yeah.
came, you know. Oh, he plays on the left side of the defense, he plays on the right side of the defense, he fits in here, he fits in there. So why not? Why not? Why not? Honestly, it looked like his attempt, you know, it didn't look like it was one of those desperate, like just put my boot through it and hope for the best attempts. It looked as though there was some technique to it. So maybe.
Interesting. Now, at the end, just after that volley, just not even a minute later, again, Jules Anthony Vilsan with another very interesting and well placed shot that was saved by the goalkeeper. Made sure that the goal was at the end of that action with Opoku pushing it in the back of the net, or even I think Mabika that
I
counted.
think it was
Counted as
credited
a
as an own
CSC.
goal, yeah.
Exactly, as an own goal. Even if I'm not sure. I have to see the replay. I saw the replay quite a few times. I couldn't really make it if it is an own goal or a goal from Opoku. But of course, the pressure of Opoku made it happen.
Exactly.
Goal. That's for sure. That we can give the credit to Opoku. How important, first of all, was Mahala Opoku in your opinion? And let's talk about Jules Anthony Vilsan and the first 38 minutes that he gave us. First start with for him, 38 minutes. No need. Sample size is small, and we all are aware of that.
Yeah.
But 38 minutes, very encouraging, and we have quite a few comments on.
We do.
Talk about it.
I've been waiting for you.
Okay, so let's start with Opoku first, because we're gonna just analyze his game first, and then we'll jump on to Vilsan.
I liked his energy a lot. It looked as though his runs were intelligent. It looked as though he was finding interesting space. There were a few balls that he played that were, I think, good for his receiving striker. Whether that was he played the ball into Lassie Laplainen in the second half for the penalty, whether that was, Jules Anthony Vilsan to take a shot. So overall, I liked his game. I actually liked it better, even though he didn't get on the score sheet or get an assist or anything like that. That I liked it. I thought it was. I saw a lot of intelligence in his play, and I think maybe he's benefited from that 3 weeks to get a lot more comfortable with his teammates and kind of learn their habits.
I think that Opoku is going to be the signing of the season for CF Montreal. I know that we loved what Duke was bringing to the table, what Lassiter brought to the table, but I think that with Opoku, we found that guy that's going to make everything click in a certain way. I'm not going to say that they're going to win the MLS Cup. Far from it. All I'm saying is, with him, we're that much more dangerous, which is very interesting because he's the most complete striker we've had in a while. Like, for me, he's even more complete than Romel Kyoto, in my opinion. I feel that he's more complete than Romel Kyoto. And hopefully we'll see Romel Kyoto back with the lineup. And I would love to see Opoku and Kyoto play together.
That would be fascinating.
That would be really, really interesting with Duke behind them. Chouanière, Piet. Oh, that's going to be, I think, a very interesting team. Talking about Jules Anthony Vilsan, let's share the comments that we've had since the beginning of the pod. So first of all, Patrick Vincent looked incredible aside from the two goal creations. He also says, Patrick White, Tony Marinaro said he's on the same level as Kone. You saw that yesterday. And we have also, do we have another
No,
comment?
that's it.
Oh, that's it. So all from Patrick. What do you think about what's being said of Julien-Anthony Vincent?
I think, for me, I really haven't seen enough to like lose my mind over him yet. I think I also just kind of want to keep my head on my shoulders a little bit and make sure not to get too carried away, not to get too high expectations of a really young player who's basically playing his first pro minutes. But yesterday was incredibly encouraging. Yesterday, I mean, to see, I think, let's face it, we've lived with Chinonso before as our starting striker for the last little while, and I don't think there's a space that has been kinder to him than this podcast, truly. But to see the difference on the pitch for a striker who can actually receive the ball at his feet, and there isn't a tragic first touch. His shots are dangerous. They force the keeper, they force the defenders into actions, they cause own goals, which, to be fair, Ford did as well. I see a lot of potential for sure. I think he has a really exciting future ahead of him. I really hope that he just has a little knock so that he's not sidelined, because I think he hopefully is going to take a lot of positive away from his performance, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect on the score sheet. Because he didn't, at the end of the day, he didn't get any credit for his contribution to the two goals. But I loved his runs. I loved his ability to get in behind the shoulder of his defender. I was really impressed, honestly, for a guy who's playing his first pro minutes. I was impressed, although I am definitely withholding judgment until at least a consecutive, I'm going to say at least a consecutive 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not going to say consecutive 60 minutes. What I want to see him play against a different type of team. Like, let's go play, 40 minutes again against another team, and another 40 against another team. That's what I
Okay.
want to see. I want to see him with different oppositions in order to rate him.
You can
But
say
yeah, he
better.
was.
You
Huh?
can say better opposition. It's okay. This is a Montreal podcast, so
No,
you're
no,
safe.
no. It's not only better oppositions, because there might be a team that's not as good or
I
that's even
I
worse,
Yeah.
which I'm not really sure if it exists, but or maybe a team that's worse. But I just want to see different, and I feel that just judging a player on one game, it's just a bit too. Yeah,
It's too hasty,
it's
kind
too
of.
hasty. Exactly. And he had, a nice. He was good in one game. I think when he was substituted on for the last 10, 15 minutes, also where he was good. He got like two shots on target, and was
Yeah.
really like everybody thought that he was the next big thing. Uh, but I need to see him more. I need to see him more in
Yeah.
different situations, and then we'll see. Hearing stuff like he's the next Kone, I think let's take a step back, breathe a little, and see what he's able to bring. Because if you're judging a player just on his training and what he's showing at training, I could name at least 10 Ballon d'Or kind of players that were never able to produce that on the pitch in a game. So let's wait and see before saying that he's the next Ismail Kone. Hopefully he is, but he does have some quality, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Um, Moving on with the game, so it was 2-0 after 25 minutes for CF Montreal. Then CF Montreal started to slow down a bit. Of course, yeah, Toronto FC didn't really create anything really dangerous. At the 41st minute, that's when we saw Bryce Duke wake up,
Mhm.
giving a ball to Mathieu Choinière. Mathieu Choinière was just everywhere on the
Yeah.
pitch yesterday, everywhere. Gave it to Choinière. Choinière gives it back to Duke on the first post, and Duke tries a lobbing header,
Yes.
that went directly on the crossbar. It seemed like a weak header, but it was kind of
It
perfect
was
in a certain way.
fascinating. I honestly thought it was going to go onto the roof of the net because it looped so much. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But lo
yeah,
and behold, it was darn close. Yeah, it was a weird header.
exactly.
But
Exactly, but and that's when the halftime was over.
yeah,
CF Montreal with the lead, the 2-0 lead at halftime, a comfortable
the
2-0 lead
most
at
dangerous
halftime.
lead, though.
Most dangerous leads because this is Eve talking. Now, of course, we talked about that left flank that CF Montreal really tried to exploit as much as possible. Servania, and I think that Dunfield saw that, and Servania was completely subbed off, like right after that first half. With Servania and Bradley were subbed off at
No,
halftime.
it was Ibarra actually and Bradley who were subbed off.
Yeah, because but Servania went to the middle of the pitch. That's why.
Yes, he moved. Yeah, he moved
He moved to
positions.
the middle of the pitch. You're right. And it was Franklin that went and took the right hand side of the Toronto FC defense. So Franklin came in for Ibarra, and Coelho came in the middle for Bradley. So in the middle, you had Coelho and Servania playing in the middle of the pitch, uh, and that I think made a difference on the pitch for CF Montreal.
Yeah.
They weren't able to create as much as they were able to in the first half, right?
No, no. And obviously, let's face it, the onus was on TFC at the end of the day, right? Like, if there was a team who had the impetus to score, it better have had been TFC, or they had no business being out there. As well, we just forgot to mention that as well, after 38 minutes, unfortunately,
Yep,
Julien
we talked
Denis.
about it.
Oh, we did mention it.
Yeah, yeah,
But did we mention that it was Chinonso 4 who came in?
yeah. No, I didn't say that. I
Okay.
just said that he played 38 minutes. That
Okay,
he
yeah.
was
Okay, well, it
38.
was 04 who had replaced him because I think that also contributed a little bit to the changing of the tide in
Oh,
the second half. No, I'm
oh, come on.
sorry.
Oh, come on. Like people like to man, people are so harsh on 2004. Like he
No,
wasn't good.
no,
He wasn't good. I agree, but
yeah.
like
Okay, well, just to be
I,
clear, he was
I'm
out
not.
there.
I'm not gonna blame 04 just because
No, I'm not
Montreal
blaming
started
him
playing.
single handedly. No, God, no. No, absolutely not blaming him single handedly. Calm down.
Kind of, kind of,
Um,
kind of.
no, I said contributed. He
Yeah.
wasn't the sole contributor. Um, where was I going with my story? Anyway, yeah, I agree that fixing the midfield, or at least I'll call it fixing, I guess, for want of a better word. I agree that the changes to the midfield did a lot for TFC because they were finally able to actually string together a lot more meaningful possession. And Montreal seemed to really struggle to come to grips with the improved distribution out of TFC's midfield. They seem to struggle to string two passes together. Montreal did at the end of the day, really struggled to get their feet on the ball. And honestly, for me, like minutes 45 to 70 were just an intense period of suffering. Just real intense. But go for it. I'm sure you probably have a better breakdown than that.
Yeah, it was from the 45th till the 75th, maybe. That's when
Yeah, I
CF
suppose.
Montreal. It was very, very hard for CF Montreal. You talked about the midfield of Toronto, gaining some momentum with those changes, but also I feel that the CF Montreal players were playing a bit. It was
Like
a bit.
lackadaisical, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. A bit nonchalant play
Yes.
in a certain way. Just trying, feeling that they're like superior to their opponents.
Well,
And
when we get to talking about the first goal, for me, that first goal, or is it the second goal? I forgot. I don't know, but there was one goal where like Montreal were just casually passing it back and forth in front of their own net, and then boom,
yeah,
got it picked off your toe.
that's the last goal.
That's
That's
the
the last
second goal,
goal.
right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yep. No, the first one comes from further up the field.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, the
yeah,
first one exactly with Insigne that came in
yeah,
for Marshall Ruddy that didn't do anything, even if he's a very talented Jackie
Yeah, yeah,
Ready.
disappointing.
Yeah, so Insigne came in at the 60th minute along with CJ Sapong that nobody likes in Toronto. And Insigne got the ball in the middle of the pitch, made sure to give a very exciting pass to Bernadeschi that scored on a curling shot at the 67th minute. It was 2-1 at that point. I'm pretty sure that pessimistic Eve was like, okay, we're done. We're going to lose 6-2.
I was. Well, I mean, number one, this Toronto FC team hasn't scored in like 600 and some odd minutes. Maybe they crossed the threshold to 700 during that match. I'm not sure, but like we were in the eons of not scoring, and so I was honestly just pissed that Montreal gave them their first goal in forever. So like, no matter how the game ended, I was not going to be super pleased. Um, but yeah, I was like squeaky bum, like, hold on, bite your nails. I have no fingernails left basically by the end of today. Um, Especially just seeing how they were two very different tempos, Toronto and Montreal from the start of that second half. So when they conceded, I said, oh my God, this is, like Pumas all over again, because we saw Montreal kind of fall into the same lull against Pumas when they were up 2-0 and then suffered in the second half.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my God, here we go again. And I was like, there's no penalty shootout to save tonight, guys. Like, get it together. So yeah, I was worried, honestly, because there was the momentum, at least within that match, was not on Montreal's side in the second half.
And then we saw the moment of brilliance from Mahalo Opoku. And we
Yes.
have to say it, moment of brilliance, because he was so incisive on that play at the 77th minute, receiving the ball with his back to the goal around the middle of the pitch, turning on himself and completely putting Mabika out of the picture with that turn, and then that run
Lovely
straight
little run.
forward with two of his teammates following him, with Lassie on the right and Ofor on the left. That was very interesting, and you see he looked at both his right hand side and the left hand side, and he decided to go for Lassie Lapalainen with the no look pass in a certain way in the penalty area. Lassie Lapalainen with a bit of a heavy touch, but thankfully Petretta pushed Lassie directly on the goalkeeper. Montreal was awarded a penalty. Petretta was awarded a red card, and it was a penalty that was scored by Mathieu Chouanière with his brace. Looking at this whole action, like, we have to be impressed by the work of Mahalo Opoku.
Yes, very. That was probably my favorite play of the game, honestly, and maybe one of my favorite of him in a Montreal shirt. Like, even compared to scoring goals, because there was so much that he did right in that. The technique to turn and leave Mabika for lost completely. The fact as well, I love the fact that his two supporting players, his teammates, followed his run perfectly, and they timed their runs as well. I don't know if that's something they had worked on or it was just a heat of the moment thing that came together. His run, his confidence in choosing who he was passing to, the timing of his pass. What was there not to like about it? Pessimistic Eve has nothing.
Nothing. No, really. That's when I see that we have a gem of a player. It's as simple as that. His touch, his first touch, his ability to his technical abilities, for sure. That Mahalo Opoku can be a very, very, very good signing for CF Montreal. And then Montreal was in control, 3-1. They started to defend a bit their lead, which is kind of normal. At 77th minute, you have a two goal lead in a certain way, until the 93rd minute. So really good pass from Lassie Lapalainen. I feel that there's some sort of chemistry between Lassie and Opoku, which could be
Yeah.
very interesting with Lassie coming back to fitness.
And playing
Um,
on the right where he's a little more comfortable, it seems.
Playing on the right, exactly as a right wing back, by the way, or in a
Mhm.
4-3-3, because I feel that it was changed. The formation was a bit changed with Lassie
Yeah, he
playing
was
more as
really
a
high up the
winger.
pitch. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So that was interesting too. So Lassie gave a ball directly, a through ball to Opoku, one on one with the keeper, and Opoku misses the net. And that for me is a bit of worrying, in my opinion. Yes, he had a great game, but this should have been buried.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel like I can't help but wonder if at the end of the match it's a question a little bit of heavy legs as well. Um, but yeah, especially, knowing Montreal's kind of history of ruining their missed chances in front of goal in other matches where they've been shut out 1-0 more than once this season. Yeah, I think you want to see, especially after such a long break, you want to see players coming back and being a lot more clinical with their finishing, because that was my one humble request of Hernan Losada. Just line them up in front of a goal and just shoot the ball. um, but again, at the end of a pretty long and grueling match, especially given that second half where there was so much time spent chasing possession, a part of me does have to wonder if we just chalk it up to end of the match fatigue.
I don't think so. I think that it
No,
was a bit of. I think it's just a bit of lack of experience in a certain way, where
maybe.
players thought that they were, again, it's second time in that game where players thought that they were better than what they really are, and unfortunately just started not really paying attention to the way they're playing, and you see it right after in the 94th minute, and that's, you talked about it a bit earlier when we talked about the first goal. So, we thought that it was that goal, but that's the last goal, the 94th minute. CF Montreal playing with the ball like it was nothing in their own half, thinking that by
Yeah,
giving like really short passes, they're going to be able to outrun the clock in a
directly in
certain
front of their
way,
own goal.
directly in front of their own goal. And then you see George Campbell trying a long pass to relieve the pressure. It
Hmm.
touches a Toronto FC player,
Hmm.
goes directly to Bernadeschi, that gives it to Osorio. Osorio gives it back to Bernadeschi, and Bernadeschi is so lethal in front of goal, and he scores one of those shots that we've seen from him.
Yeah,
It was 3-2, and you're like, surely not gonna happen. They're not,
unless your name is Eve, in which case you're like,
unless your
oh
name is
god,
Eve.
here we go.
Exactly. It was 3-2 at that point, and it felt a bit weird because
It didn't feel like a 3-2.
it didn't feel like a 3-2. It should have been a 10-2 score in a certain way. I don't know. What do you, if you're Hernan Losada,
Hmm.
how would you address this game, that post game? Maybe
Yeah.
not right after the game, maybe the
No,
next day, today, this morning, they woke up, they went to training. What would be your message?
match management, managing a lead. I don't know if it's so much a message as rather what he has to do as a coach, because really that's the last two matches where Montreal's held a lead and they've really not looked comfortable with the opposition's adjustments to being behind and wanting to come out. Um, so I honestly don't know if it's so much what he needs to say to his players, or if it's like as far as say a rallying cry, or if it's what he needs to work on in training as to the tactics of um, managing a match. Because to me, making those little tiki taka passes in front of your own goal, like so deep in your own half, is not normal. And
Huh?
so if he didn't tell them to do that, that certainly needs to be corrected. And if he did instruct his players, that's okay. Then I have some questions.
No, I agree. I feel that Hernan Losada has to be a bit more strict
Mhm.
when he sees that, and we have quite a few comments regarding those two goals.
Yeah.
Uh, let's
Let's start
start
with
with
Hervé.
Hervé. Yeah, Hervé. The win is great, but the two goals Montreal conceded are worrying for how the defense can perform until the end of the season, particularly against teams like New England, Columbus, or Cincinnati.
Yes.
I think we're going to talk about that more in the second segment.
Yeah.
Um, because for me, it's not a matter of the defense. It was the unit altogether because the
Agreed.
midfielders weren't playing
They were
their
kind
part.
of pissed off. Yeah.
Exactly. They weren't really playing their part either. And we'll talk about that, that's for sure, because
Hmm.
I think that Hernan Losada needs to make sure that his team is aware that a 2-0 lead, that a 3-1 lead
It
is
can
nothing
disappear.
and it's scarce. And you need to make sure that you keep your seriousness and
Hmm.
your calmness and you keep on going forward in a
For
certain way.
sure.
Even how cheesy it is, but
For sure. Let's look at our other comments on the topic though over here.
yeah. And we had
Oh,
oh yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Sorry, we had a couple more comments. Holy Gale, love the 3 points. We were dangerously close to leaving Toronto with a tie or a loss. Now I see where the pessimism comes from. And then Roberto, luckily it happened, or would have left Toronto with 1 point. I think he was talking about the penalty
Yeah.
and the foul. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say luckily it happened because again, it was a moment of brilliance of Mahala Opoku. But I agree with everyone that was talking about um, that worrying feeling that you have when the second goal is scored, and even when the first goal was scored by Toronto FC, you felt like the game uh, was slipping away,
Yep. Yeah.
and that's a bit worrying. Where the other team, like Toronto, wasn't close to being as good as Montreal.
No, no, but like I said, it's kind of two matches in a row where we saw Montreal just completely outplay a team for 45 minutes, take a lead, and then come out the second half like I don't know how to describe it. um, like they got the job done almost, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's anyway. It's a little bit worrying because we've seen Montreal kind of struggle with second halves in many respects this season. They had a really bad habit of conceding really early in the second half, really early in the season, seemed to correct that. Um, and even when they put together that really good string of performances, overall, it didn't seem as chaotic. When they put together that string of shutouts and wins, it didn't seem as frantic at the end. So I'm not 100% sure what has changed.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm not really sure either. But let's look at the bottom line right now.
Hmm.
CF Montreal has its second away win of the season, which is really good. It's a lot better than only one. Uh,
Price is good.
Twice as good, exactly. And it comes at the right moment.
Yes.
That's the final stretch. You need to make sure that you're still in the hunt for playoffs, and you made it happen against one of the worst teams in MLS. I think
Also
that
the
a
rival.
win and a rival, and I think that a win is that important. And let's
Yep.
take a look at the standings, if
Yes.
we
Just a
can,
sec.
please.
It's
So
just not
CF Montreal, what's really interesting. Okay, let's look at the playoff line because that's what's interesting. So you have, I think Atlanta, like the seventh position, and up there, I think they're a bit too far from CF Montreal. Even
agreed.
if it's only 6 points, Atlanta is only 6 points ahead of Montreal. Same thing for Nashville, 7 points for Columbus, and we're playing them twice. So they're close, but not that close because there's only 10 games left for CF Montreal.
Exactly.
But look at behind CF Montreal. First of all, what's really interesting is that CF Montreal is the first of the teams that are fighting for those two playoff spots.
Hmm.
So they're in first position with 24 games, 32 points. same exact amount of points as Chicago, that has also 32 points in 24 games. So very interesting there. It's just that Montreal has more wins than Chicago. And then you have DC with 30 points, 25 games played. New York Red Bulls with 29 points, 24 games played. Charlotte with 26 points, 23 games played. New York City FC, 26 points and 25 games played. Toronto FC, you can forget about them, 19 points with 25 games played. And here's what's interesting. Inter Miami, yes, with only 18 points, but only 22 games played. So let's say they play their next two games and they get to 24 games and they win their next two games. They're at 24 points, only 8 points away from CF Montreal. And we all know how Inter Miami is and their
Yeah.
form right now.
Yep.
So when you look at the standings, who are your biggest rivals for those two last spots?
DC United and their shithousery. um, the Wayne Rooney, I don't know, boogeyman. Two biggest rivals. I am going to say DC United because of their ultra pragmatic tactics that seem to just befuddle Montreal. Although Montreal is done playing them for the season, I think.
True.
They are. Two biggest rivals. I mean,
because the New York teams haven't been that good.
No, they haven't. But I mean, let's face it, they're not that far behind. I think Miami, let's face it, I think Miami, you can't negate them. So I'm
Even
going to
if
say
they're last, it's crazy when you think about it.
It's wild. Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, no, you can't negate Miami. I'm going to say Miami and DC.
Miami and DC.
Just because DC seems to have, Wayne Rooney seems to have one over on us.
Now I know that's Eve, you're pessimistic, Eve, and I'm going to give you a stat. I'm going to give you a stat, okay? Out of the 10 games left for CF Montreal, Montreal is playing 6 games at home. 6 games at home. Knowing that CF Montreal has the best, not the best, like in the top 5 with their home winning record in the East. The only teams that have done better are Cincinnati, New England, Philadelphia, and Columbus, maybe Nashville. So not a lot of teams have done better than them at home. Don't you feel that there's a big chance for them to finish in the top 9?
I think you're only looking at half the equation because they're not playing these matches against like random Joe Blows off the street. They still have to host Columbus. They still have to host New England coming up this weekend. They still have to host Cincinnati, I believe.
Yeah.
So it is a tall order. Those teams are no slumps. So
just because of but if you look at the teams that they lost against.
Oh, yeah, no, believe me, they lost against some crap teams.
And they won against very good teams at home, right?
Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia was at the Big O.
Nashville.
Yep, no, Nashville's legit. Nashville is legit.
Yeah.
Yep. I cannot put any asterisks on that one for you. Orlando. Yep. Orlando as well. Can't put any asterisks on that one on you.
Exactly.
But still, I mean, Cincinnati's just such a complete unit this year. It's like off the rails.
They won against Philadelphia at home too.
They did.
Yeah.
But it was. I'm just telling you, like, I see that more as an anomaly. Like to me, Cincinnati is like so far ahead. We might as well write that one off.
Okay, so you're gonna like that comment. Roberta saying Eve is right. She loves that. She's gonna love you for the rest of your life. I do. So it's gonna be interesting. I think that we know that CF Montreal is not out of the picture, which is very, very interesting.
No, they're more in the picture than I expected them to be. So there.
Good. Moving on to the next segment and I think that's going to be a very interesting one. We talked and we talked about it a bit earlier. You and I in the show. We're pretty sure that those 3 weeks to a month break for Hernan Losada
Mm-hmm.
would mean a change in the tactical formation.
Mm-hmm.
But we watched the game yesterday. There wasn't any changes. Still a back three. What do you feel about that back three that seems to be here to stay, with Waterman in the middle of the back three, Corbo on the right, and Campbell on the right and Corbo on the left? What do you feel about that back three? And do you agree with Losada's choice to keep that back three even if they lost Camacho?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit hard to tell because we've not seen a back four. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to say how these players would behave in a back four because Waterman, we did see a little tiny bit in a back four, back in the day. But like Corbo and Campbell, we've never seen them in a back four with Montreal. So, and like, again, it was like the early edition of Joel Waterman. So even then, I don't feel like that's a huge like a huge way to judge them. So it's kind of difficult to say. I mean, let's face it, we've liked Gabriela Corbo in a back three. We have. I think we've all come to agree we liked him on the left side of the back three. We like Joel Waterman in the middle, even if it's not his preferred position. He seems to fit pretty well there. So I think for me, my main question mark really is Campbell. And unfortunately, he's kind of had an audition really at all the roles along that back line as well. And maybe the right position is the most conclusive for him.
Yeah, I agree.
Or at least it's the closest. Obviously, like that giveaway on the TFC goal at the end of the match yesterday, I'm hoping that's a lot more of an anomaly than the predictor. But he seemed to be relatively comfortable there. He didn't seem to be as far out as his depth as he was at the other two positions. So, I mean, if you've got 2/3 of your back line very well set up, and it's a formation that the rest of your team is intimately familiar with, given that many of them played in the same formation or quite similar last year. I can understand not wanting to rock the boat too much mid-season, given that aside from Camacho being gone, the rest of the players who made that formation work are still here.
Yeah. I'm not going to judge the back four because, as you said, we haven't seen them work together as a back four. I kind of agree with you.
Okay.
I'm a bit disappointed at the tactical flexibility
or lack thereof.
That's the lack of tactical flexibility that Losada is showing. I was expecting, because right now, if you have an injury to one of the back three, who's on the bench? Who's going to help you? You have Torkelson.
The ghost of Robert Torkelson.
You have Torkelson, Jabang, and that's it.
Yes.
And Jabang is not
very fresh
to be a starter, even if of course he can play in 5-10 minutes. Torkelson, we almost haven't seen.
I mean, it's kind of like trying to judge the sign. You're
putting all your eggs in the same basket, and of course Alvarez. We're not really sure about him. We've never seen him.
He's currently playing with the reserves, so
exactly. But that could be a good thing. We have
exactly.
We'll talk about it a bit later. We have Chan that asked the question about the reserve. But still, it's pretty thin for a team that wants to play a back three. That's one thing. But on the positive side, I think that's exactly where I want to see Joel Waterman. That role in the middle of a back three is tailor-made for him. It's as simple than that. He's really good in that role, and we've seen it yesterday. He was in control of the middle of the back three. That's where he should play all the time. I love it. So there's some positives and some negatives. a bit of column A, a bit of column B in that decision. The only thing is that you're not able to play with your best midfielders. And that's
Yeah.
what also worries me, because I think you have four players that should be starters in that four midfielders that should be starters in
Mhm.
that CF Montreal team. And that's Samuel Piet, Victor Wanyama, Mathieu Chouanier, and Bryce Duke. You
Mhm.
put all of four of them on
Yep.
the pitch, you need a back four, or else it's just not going to work.
Well, you just don't have enough space for them.
Exactly.
I mean, I think
You can play 4-5-1. Sorry, you can play 5-4-1 but that's
no,
very defensive. That's very
that
defensive.
doesn't really fit with what I think Olivier Renard wants his
No,
coach
it
to play.
works. It works, but you need some very, very, very offensive wing backs.
Yes,
Which
with lungs of steel.
not really, because you have three midfielders that are holding midfielders that can cover the width,
Maybe,
right?
maybe
So you're able to play with two, but and you have those very offensive
we
wing
do.
backs with
Oh my god,
ZVG
oh my god, we're gonna start
ZVG
a movement for 5-4-1.
and Lassie, or ZVG and Lassiter. So it could be done, but
Don't want to start a 5-4-1 movement, please.
it's gonna be very, very, very interesting if that happens. But I think that Losada has proven that he likes that partnerships
Yeah,
up front with two strikers.
yeah,
So let's wait and see what's going to happen, and in the evolution of the tactical segment of
yeah.
Losada. We have quite a few questions about the reserves. So
For
we have
sure.
Chan saying, after playing in PLSQ last weekend, a 0-2 loss, will Real loan back to CPL? And we also talked about Alvarez being also playing with the reserve.
Yeah.
Um, what's really interesting is that for me, playing with the reserve doesn't mean that's a bad thing.
Mm-mm.
I feel that that means I count on you. I just need you to have a bit of match fitness to make sure that you find your groove back, because I'm going to need you until the end of the season. It could be
Yeah.
that too, right?
Yeah, and I think I mean for Alvarez as well, he's getting acclimated to a new country, to a new style of play under a new coach. I mean, everything's very new for him. He's extremely young, so for me, it's entirely normal that he starts out with the reserves. Completely normal
And for
because
Shanrea.
for Sean Rea, I'm sure it's got to be a little bit of a challenge for him because he got lots of starts in his boots. He scored his first professional goal in Canadian Championship. And, he's kind of been on the outside looking in, particularly since Bryce Duke has arrived. So I feel like for him, this is really an opportunity for him to get some confidence back, to string together some matches with some minutes in them. At the end of the day, he is playing competitively versus just a bunch of meaningless friendlies somewhere. Um, and so, yeah, is the level a little bit higher in CPL than it is in PLSQ, certainly. But at the same time, he's able to play, close to home and play near, and remain close to the first teams that he can stay, in the know and stay kind of on Lozada's radar a lot closer. So
Yeah,
I hope he's looking at it as advantageous and not as like a super slight.
no, I think it is advantageous. I think he needs to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I still believe in Shanria in a certain way. I'm pretty sure that, yes, he's in the doghouse right now with Hernan Losada, but I'm pretty sure that Losada sees what he's able to bring to the table. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of him until the end of the season. I don't think he's going to be loaned back to CPL. Uh, he mastered the CPL challenge in a certain way. He played 2 seasons there, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
no, 2 seasons there, being one of the best players for Valor at one point. So I don't think that's where he's gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
But let's wait and see. Let's wait and see.
Let's
And
wait and
talk,
see.
talking about CPL, Two players, two loanees of CF Montreal made it to the team of the week this week
Love that.
with John Assi and Elias Eliadis, both getting the shout out at the team of the week, which is really interesting. So
Yeah.
let's hope that they continue on developing themselves and becoming better players in the future. Eve, we had one more
We have a
question.
question from the infamous Sam.
Yeah, Sam. It's been a while, man. I would like you to discuss Losada. Some like him, some don't. But for the latter, why so? Is it the kind of case in which sometimes you kind of don't like someone without really knowing why, or is there something generally not to like in him? Thanks, guys. I'll let you start with the answer.
That's so funny. The Holy Gale and I were having a conversation, like basically exactly on this topic the other day. So it's kind of funny. Um, but anyway, um, you know, I mean, when he arrived to Montreal, obviously there were some kind of rumors or some reports of his past, of how he managed his teams, that were rather off-putting, to say the least. That certainly didn't help. But overall, like, I think the way he's carried himself, he seems to be trying to engage with, the supporters. He seems to say the right things in press conferences and in post game. Hady, I mean, you can speak to that better than I can. He seems to have like a relatively approachable demeanor. I'm not like super enamored with his kind of, as we discussed, it, tactical inflexibility. You know, I but also, in the vein of development here, at the club, we are dealing with a young coach who's kind of cutting his teeth and learning his style. I think it was like a little bit surprising that it was very kind of the discourse that he provided at the start or in preseason, about super high press, et cetera, was very not incongruent with the actual style of play that we've seen. We've not seen nearly as high of a press, I think, as we were set up to expect. And I think that was maybe a little bit jarring. And finally, for me, I think like what I maybe struggle with is he hasn't committed to a style as a coach. He's neither a tracksuit manager nor a suit and tie manager.
Okay. How is that important?
If you ever played Football Manager, you only get to pick one.
You're funny. You're funny. I know, but I get what you're saying. Are you a people's coach or are you a
Exactly.
soccer coach? Right. So
Exactly.
you're not
Exactly.
really sure which one he is.
Yeah. It kind of feels like he's trying to figure that out himself a little bit, maybe. And again, he's so early in his coaching career that maybe he is still trying to figure that out. But what do you think, Hady?
I I think that Hernan Losada, I think he's not as inexperienced as what you, in my opinion,
No,
what you describe.
he just is very young in general.
He's very young, but he has experience in Belgium,
Yeah.
then experience in MLS with DC United. Um, he played for a while, so I don't think that he's still trying to find what kind of coach he is. I think he's communications wise, he's really really good. I really love the way he conducts himself in interviews. He has the right
Mhm.
words. He chooses the right words. Uh, he chooses his moments to celebrate with the team, to celebrate in front of the fans, with the fans.
Mhm.
He seems like someone that generally cares about people, which is not something that you see quite often in that field. So that's good. Why do people dislike him? It's maybe because of that closeness, because he's close to the fan and everything, and people feel that he's playing a game and he's not being very serious as a coach. He's not taking his distance as a coach in a certain way. I'm not really sure, but I feel the fact that he's so likable is playing against him in a
Yeah.
certain way.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And second thing, he plays in a tactical system where you need a very effective and efficient number 10. and you don't have that kind of player. And
No.
for me, that I talked about that tactical flexibility or the lack of tactical flexibility, that for me is a problem. You deal with the squad that you have. You don't have a squad, you don't have a very talented, a very efficient number 10, then you don't need to play with a number 10. You have too many number 10s and you don't have anyone that's as good. Like play with two 10s, play with three 10s. You can play a 4-2-3-1, a narrow 4-2-3-1 with three offensive midfielders. That's not wingers. You are able to do that. Now, at one point, is that really playing against him? I think so. Maybe that's why we're not really seeing that love towards Losada.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, let's be honest. Soccer in North America or soccer in Montreal in general, like professional soccer, I'm talking, is not really like really ingrained into the culture, right? It's not really deep into the culture. It's not really uh, understood by a lot of fans. So, in a certain way, I have a feeling that if you don't win and if you don't have a winning season, you're not going to be liked as a coach. Who are
Yes.
the coaches that were liked by CF Montreal fans? And I'm talking about not CF Montreal, the diehard fans, because the diehard fans they're connoisseurs. They know what they're talking about. I'm talking about the general population of the CF Montreal fans. Who were the coaches that were liked? With Renassi.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, Mauro Biello had tons of goodwill coming in.
Yeah, but he
He's a
made
club
he made
legend.
it and he made it to the semifinals of the MLS Cup, the
Yes.
conference final.
In one of his seasons, yes.
Again,
Otherwise,
including seasons. Marco Schalibam, he had 6 months of brilliance
yeah.
as a coach,
Yep.
and that's it. Who are the other coaches that were really praised by the CF Montreal fan base? I'm talking about MLS, right? We're not talking about
Pre-MLS, yeah.
pre-MLS era.
No,
So
I
I
think that's
think you
it.
need to win. You need to win. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
But the reason why we haven't seen them really turn their back to Hernan Losada is because play the youth movement. Because people are understanding that Nathan Saliba is progressing a lot. That
Hmm.
he was subpar at the beginning of the season. Now he's getting better and better. I think we can safely say that Nathan Saliba is the fairy tale of this season. Growing from a subpar player to a very important and almost almost a starting 11 kind of caliber player. So, which is really good. That progression, that evolution is really interesting. So, and that's all thanks to someone like Hernan Losada. And I think that people are giving him that praise
Hmm.
that he deserves. So he needs to win more, and then he's going to be liked by everybody. And I think that year two, we're going to see a lot more of Hernan Losada, and he's gonna make it or break it.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
And Robbie has a good point. Hard to like coaches when they change so often, but but if it's true, but it's true if you don't win, you're not like that much. But
Oh
yeah,
wow.
he has a good point. There's been kind
Okay.
of a revolving door. It's hard to get too attached to
So
someone.
Robbie, so when it's Eve, you say Eve is right. But when it's Hattie, there's always a but somewhere, right? Okay, no worries. No, I'm joking, obviously. Yeah, but look at Wilfried Nancy again.
Yeah.
He's loved in Montreal, and he's only been there like as a coach, as a head coach, 2 years.
Yeah.
So give him a year. Give Hernan Lozada a year. If next year he gets that winning season, I'm pretty sure he's going to be loved. It's not going to be a problem at all.
Agree.
Perfect. So that's it for CF Montreal and for
Mhm.
the first two segments. I think it's time to move on to social media.
I agree. Alrighty, shall we?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so first, I believe it's pretty topical. It's from True North Foot, and it's something we didn't touch on in our segment on Montreal versus Toronto. But the Impact, or Montreal, have won 8 of the last 10 matches versus TFC. A little bit of a turning of the tide, yes?
Yeah, but Montreal has always had a good record against CFC. I'm talking about the MLS era.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been bad, 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 but now it's dominance. It's really dominance because we talk about 8 wins out of 10 games, but
Mm-hmm.
in those two other games, there's one draw
Yep. Yep.
and only one loss in 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's brilliant.
I'll
That's
take it
really
any
brilliant.
day of the week versus the arch rival. Yeah,
Exactly.
for
Exactly.
sure.
No, I'm very happy to see that. At least there's something where we're in a positive,
Yes.
unanimously in the positive.
Agree. Agree. All right. Next up is tweet number 2, which is from Nathan Durek. So this is regarding a letter that was posted by the Canadian Men's National Team Players Union. And I'm not going to read the whole letter, but I think basically the most scathing indictment that they give of Canada Soccer in this particular letter is that Canada Soccer is threatening not to schedule any further matches. Um, you know, as the ongoing negotiations about financial compensation continue. And so Nathan's um, comment on this is damning from Canadian men's national team on Canada Soccer. Only one match in the next 2 windows, plus players still haven't been paid since World Cup compensation 9 months after the tournament ended. What do you make of this one, Hady?
Listen, yeah, what can we say?
It's a
What
hot
more can we
mess.
say about Canada soccer? Honestly, 9 months that the men haven't been paid compensation, and now the women just finished their World Cup, so they're
Yeah.
gonna wait what 3 years to get paid.
Well,
And
the women hadn't been paid for 2022 going into the World
oh no,
Cup.
no, no, they reached agreement before the World Cup,
Oh, you're
so
right.
don't
You're right.
forget. No,
Yeah,
don't forget.
my bad.
I don't know if they got
Wasn't
paid,
great.
but they reached an
Yes, I was gonna say. Yeah. I don't know if that money's hit their direct deposit yet.
Yeah, and that's bad. One game in two international windows. We
It's
talked about
pretty.
it a bit
Yeah.
earlier. One game
Yeah.
in two international window. You're supposed to have 2 games every window, at
Yep.
least.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know about that. It's starting to become
Kind
very
of
worrying.
farcical.
If um, if I am the Concacaf, I would
Start looking.
intervene
Yeah.
in a certain way. If I was the FIFA, I would intervene because right now you're talking about a team that qualified for World Cup that has
That
one
has
of the
World
best,
Cup qualifying to them. Yeah,
yeah,
like World Cup
this
is coming there.
exactly, and one of the best left back in the world right now, left wing back or left back in the world right now, with Alfonso Davies, with
Hmm.
one of the most promising strikers in the world right now, with Jonathan David, and not being able to pay their players. That, in my opinion, is not only a problem for Canada, but for the image of soccer across the world. And that's very worrying.
Yeah, it's disconcerting. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to know that Toronto FC might be able to get somebody off their, or it's not Toronto FC, I just went and spoiled myself. Canada Soccer might be able to get somebody off their payroll because next tweet is from Joshua Cloak, who actually wrote an article for The Athletic stating that an interesting name has emerged in the TFC head coach search, John Herdman. And actually, apparently, earlier today, it has come out that he is considered the favorite.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Now, John Herdman, I know the haters of John Herdman are very happy. I've seen so many tweets and so many X's.
Mm-hmm.
Is it X's now or tweets?
I'm gonna call it a tweet till I'm old and gray. So
So many tweets from fans saying, "Oh, that would be great to see John
mm-hmm.
Herdman with Toronto FC." I think that would be, if I'm trying to be as objective as possible, I think that could be a very interesting thing for all parties. First of all, John Herdman needs a new challenge, or maybe is ready for a new challenge. Second of all, Canada Soccer might want to go and attract a
Who are
high
you gonna
caliber coach.
attract with behaving as they are?
But at the end of the day, a high caliber coach is going to bring maybe more sponsors too. So that could be a
More
win, in
sponsors
the
to
fan of.
Canada Soccer business.
Yeah, true. So we'll see about that. But that could be interesting too. And Toronto FC need a coach that can coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't think that idea is bad for neither one of the parties. Now, let's wait and see. What do you think?
I mean, let's face it, if Canada Soccer is ready to move on from John Herdman, if he were to find a new job, then they wouldn't have to pay out anything for terminating his contract, which obviously, let's face it, apparently they are cash strapped. So that would save them a few dollars. I don't know, because I think, it's hard to say, because I feel like that he brings a lot, but he also has some limitations, as we've seen. I really don't know. I mean, at least he'd get to play at BMO Stadium all the time. I don't know. Home is where the heart is, right? Go ahead for it.
We have a question from Robbie. I'm afraid of what Canada Soccer would come up with.
Same.
Of course, we're all afraid, but
we don't
at the
trust
end of the
them.
day,
yeah.
Put Bobby Spiniolis as a Canadian national team coach. I wouldn't say no. So, put Wilfried Nancy.
Morabiel is already over there.
Yeah, but I'm not really convinced about Morabiel coaching's abilities myself personally. So, I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry about that.
Fair enough. Just one sec here. We have also a comment from Eric Lebros. Is rebuilding the men's national team for 2026 after heartbreaking presence of 2022 World Cup and Nations League isn't a big enough challenge for Herman. I agree with Yves on his limitations, but does he not feel like he isn't done his work yet? So, I'm thinking he must feel like he has more work to do, I think is what Eric is trying to say.
Yeah, but maybe
at some point,
the challenge is too big for him, and he understands about the task that's in front of him, and he doesn't feel that he has what it takes to make it work.
And I mean, I think at some point as well, I mean, he's been with Canada Soccer. If you include with the women's national team, he's been in that sphere for a very, very long time. And at the end of the day, it's just kind of like you reach the limit of your ideas, right? You reach kind of the end of your capacity as to how far you can bring a team. I mean, we see some coaches coach teams for decades, and we see some teams or some coaches leave, after a year or two. It varies because everybody brings different things to the table. So I kind of see Eric's point a little bit. Definitely, I think there's a massive challenge lying ahead for whomever is leading the men's national team, 100%. And I think Herdman would certainly have a lot of work to do if he is the one leading that national team going into this upcoming cycle.
Of course, it's listen.
But it's just maybe you just run out of inspiration, kind of.
But not only that, sometimes you just finish the cycle and you don't feel like going through another cycle. So let's say you're at your job, right? And you just finished a very big project with, it was positive. The feedback that you got from that project is very positive. And then you have an even bigger project that can bring you to a different level, and you're like, but I don't feel like doing this
All this work
same
again.
kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like changing my whole environment and going to something different.
Yeah. That's
Um,
what I did.
why? Yeah, why not going, to or maybe going to a club. It's
Mhm.
very different coaching a national team and coaching a club.
Yeah.
Coaching a club, you're solicited every day of every minute of every hour of every day for 365 days.
Yeah.
Being a national team coach, you're not solicited as much. You have sometimes, 2, 3 weeks where you still have stuff to do, but not that much like a club coach. And
Hmm.
Roberto has a very good point. Don't forget the money factor, and of course,
For sure.
Toronto FC is
Yeah.
going to pay a hefty sum.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah. And
that
not
could be
only
very
that,
interesting, and maybe
yeah.
compensation for Canada Soccer also for just breaking the contract up from Don Herdman. So we'll see.
They're like quietly writing clauses in like in like colored pencil. Like, oh yeah,
No,
we meant this.
but if you have a contract and you're breaking it,
Yeah.
you need to pay for it, right?
I know they're
So
just adding some extra zeros on to that amount.
that's possible. That's possible.
All right, shall we?
Yeah, moving on.
All right. Next up, so I'll give some context for this one. This is from Jonesy. So this is regarding the fact that we don't know where Deanne Rose is going. As we know, Reading, of course, got relegated, and unfortunately, they made the terrible decision to move their women's team to a part-time formation, meaning that Deanne Rose is currently without a club. So there was a tweet that went out earlier that said, kind of, where is Deanne Rose going? What's up? We haven't really heard. And so Jonesy answered, I don't know, but I need to know stat. Would love her, Deanne, to stay in Europe and be that speedy outlet, but also honing her possession and hold up skills. So we have seen some women's national team players obviously move. We just saw Shalina Zadorsky sign a new contract with Tottenham today. But we haven't heard about Deanne Rose. What do you think? Do you think she's going to stay on this side of the ocean? Or do you think she's going to come back to NWSL?
I It's very interesting. I think that both options are possible.
Yeah.
I think that I don't think one club around the world um, doesn't know what Deanne Rose can bring to the table because she's a
Mm-hmm.
very pacey striker or winger, depending on where you want to play. But you want to play her. She's very technical. She's here in the big moments. She's
Mm-hmm.
clutch, which is something that's really interesting for a lot of clubs. Um, I'm not sure about her potential yet. Is she able to become a better player? That's the only thing that's really the question mark that I have personally. Um, yeah, I think that at one point she needs to play and she needs to train too because right now, yeah, she doesn't have a club. But what's really even more worrying is that she's not training with teammates. She's
Yeah.
not training with. She doesn't have she doesn't have anybody to training sessions with to
That
guide
we
her,
know of. Yeah.
and that's very disconcerting, and I don't like
Es-
that. I don't like
Especially
that.
given, she had a really difficult season last year with
Yeah,
her ACL injury.
yeah,
So you have to hope certainly that, no teams are put off by the fact that she is, although she has made her return to play, you know how it is when a player gets a significant injury like that, right? But
yeah.
anyway, yeah, obviously, European season is starting. NWSL is in full swing, so have to keep our eyes peeled.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure she's gonna find a club. I don't think it's gonna
For
take that
sure.
much
She's
for her to
incredibly
find a club.
talented. She's only 24. I
Yeah,
mean,
she's very young still.
yeah.
And by the way, talking about the women's national team, Evelyn Vian that signed with AS Roma.
Yes,
I'm very, very, very excited for Evelyn Vian. I
for
think that
sure.
all the haters of Evelyn Vian saying, "Oh, but she's playing in the Swedish league." I just hope that she masters Serie A and shows everyone how good of a striker she is because that woman needs to be a starter with that national team. So let's wait and see what she does in Italy. But that's really interesting too.
Yeah, our hype train chugs along.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, our last social media of the evening. So this is from Opta Analyst, so I'm not really a person, more of a stats machine. So this is for the Women's World Cup final between England and Spain, which of course Spain won, making history for that nation. So this here is England played 93.2% of their passes under pressure from at least one player in yesterday's Women's World Cup final defeat to Spain, with 73.7% of those under high pressure. Those were the highest proportions faced by England in a match at the tournament, the previous highest being 86.2% and 65.8% versus Nigeria. What do you make of this ridiculous pressing action from Spain in that
Oh,
final?
that's great. That's amazing, guys. I just want you to say to realize something. If England had won, we would have heard Steve say, "I predicted England to win," but now that she lost, she didn't say Elias predicted Spain to win.
He did.
She didn't say that.
No, I didn't.
So I had to
He
specify.
wasn't here to say it. So.
No, but it's incredible. Honestly,
Yeah.
I never thought that Spain would win the World Cup.
Mhm.
I thought that there was a big lack of experience within that squad. Even if there are some very experienced players, I think that as a unit, they weren't experienced enough to go all the way. But they were impressive, like really, really impressive. Like what a game! What a team! What a
Yeah.
team! What a well coached team too, because the coach has needs a lot of credit, a lot. But
He's not very well left.
yeah, but still, he won the World Cup. He
So, yeah.
won the World Cup.
Okay, you and I are gonna have to take fundamentally different stances on this one.
Go ahead, but
Yeah.
he won the World Cup, and I think that the pressures, the pressure, the high press that he instilled, made it happen. It's as simple as that. So I don't know. Yeah, it's unbelievable to see that at that level in a World Cup, to see a team that's able to do that high press and to be successful in their high press, because it's very hard to do a high press because it has to be very synchronized for it to be efficient, and it was very synchronized, and that's what's really interesting about Spain, that made it happen and that won the World Cup. But go ahead with your stats.
No, I thought they were phenomenal. I thought Spain they had so much offensive flair. Aside from that one match where they got beaten by Japan, I thought they were beautiful to watch. Truly, I don't look at La Liga that much. It's just not something I catch. I leave that to Elias. I know he'll keep us up to date. But honestly, I know that so many of the Spanish national team players play for Barcelona, and it kind of made me want to tune in. So that's how attractive I found their football versus England. And honestly, for me, England were the favorites going into this. So the fact that Spain came out and played as confidently as they did, all the more credit to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think we loved. I loved really the social media segment. It's going to be a short one for us today. Not really short, an hour and a half. Eve, thank you very much for being here with me this evening. I hope you guys liked our content today. And we're going to tell you, thank you for listening. Feel free to go and become one of our Patreons. Our show is always going to be free. I always say it, but we do have a Patreon page in case you want to contribute and helping us grow the product. Thank you again, and see you next week for another episode of The Ball is Round.